Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the American Hotspur here on Stateside Footy. I am, of course, your host, Steve Silver. Man, God damn it, what a day. What a day it was if you're a Tottenham Hotspur fan. And, of course, we're going to go ahead and get into it. Before we begin, please do hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell as well, too. And if you are tuning in on TikTok Live, of course, the link is in the description. If you want to head on over to YouTube and hook your brother up, man, go ahead and do that. Or if you want to keep watching here on TikTok Live, you are then willing to do that. All right. So this afternoon, as a matter of fact, it seemed like it was in the morning time. Tottenham Hotspur had made the decision that they have seen enough of Thomas Frank to the point where, yeah, listen, man, when you can only manage 2 wins out of 17. There are going to be repercussions, and there is going to be some accountability. And sure enough, they decided no more. Thomas Frank is done as head coach of Tottenham Hotspur, and of course, it lasted 7 months. But that being said, man, there's a lot of reasons why this decision went down, and of course, the night before. Yesterday, after what I would consider, I guess you could say it was the apex. It was the tipping point. His post-match press conference where he said, like, yeah, I'll be here 1,000%. Sure enough, not even 8 hours later, word came down that he's done. Let's go ahead and take a look at what Tottenham Hotspur have said. The club has made the decision to make a change with the men's head coach position, and Thomas Frank will leave today. He was appointed in June 2025, and we were determined to give him time and support needed to build the future together. However, results and performances have led the board to conclude that a change at this point in the season is necessary. Throughout his time at the club, Thomas has conducted himself with unwavering commitment, giving everything in his efforts to move the club forward, and we'd like to thank him for his contribution, blah, blah, blah. All right, so that was the statement from Tottenham Hotspur, and I got to be honest, it's a bunch of gaslighting BS. That's exactly what it is. Tottenham Hotspur cannot be trusted with even some of the words, wishing him well, because let's be perfectly honest, they didn't do everything in their power to support Thomas Frank. As a matter of fact, what they did was what I would like to consider self-sabotage. And from that standpoint, yeah, 100% it made his life difficult. But Thomas Frank is responsible for a few things, and let's go ahead and get into it. Number one, from the board's perspective, yeah, it's 100% bullshit. What their parting words were, without a doubt, it's just nothing but garbage. Okay, because think about what this summer was. He comes in June, early July, knowing goddamn well that Sonny wasn't coming back. And they did absolutely nothing to replace him. Towards the end of the window, they make reactionary signings. Xavi Simons comes in because James Maddison gets hurt, and they bring Kolo Muani in because Solanke gets hurt right before the start of the season. Then we fast forward to January, and we sell our leading goal scorer from last season, and we don't replace him. And the only thing we get into the window is a 19-year-old left back who may or may not be ready for the Premier League, and Conor Gallagher, who was a reaction to the loss of Rodrigo Betancourt. And oh, by the way, he doesn't play him as a box-to-box. He plays him as a holding midfielder. All right. So from that standpoint, no, the board sure as hell did not give Thomas Frank the tools necessary to be successful. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, he is responsible for the product that's on the pitch. And yes, injuries do play a part. But that being said, when he was full strength or damn near full strength, what we saw last night against Newcastle was exactly what we saw against Chelsea. It's what we saw against Arsenal. It's what we saw against some of the mid-table teams that rolled through the stadium. giving too much respect to opposition, and not enough respect to the players that are actually in your dressing room, or setting them up for success. 100%. As a matter of fact, when another player went down, you saw Thomas Frank essentially recede into a shell like a turtle. That's exactly what it was, to the point where last night, I don't know if you guys were paying attention to the positioning on the field, but Dominic Solanke had essentially withdrawn into the midfield, and we were essentially starting the match with 10 men behind the ball. I don't know if you guys were watching it, but that being said, Newcastle had 8 corners in the first 30 minutes. We didn't even get rolling until the 60th minute, like the 58th through the 65th minute, when we equalized. But that was it. And this has been an absolute repeated starting point week in and week out, where from a standpoint of, now all of a sudden you're scared to lose more players. So this is just what we're going to do. We are going to start off essentially in a defensive shell, and hopefully we can get ourselves to a situation where maybe in the second half, if things are close, maybe we can nick a draw, or if the match is close, maybe we can actually pull out a win. But certainly he was never setting his team up to be on the front foot. There was never going to be a time where Thomas Frank was going to look at an opportunity or look at an opponent and say, "Listen, man, we're going to be able to get at them in the first 15 minutes because they're weak on the back line," whatever the case may be. That was never really the case. I think we only saw it once, and that was against Bayern. It was against Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League, where we kind of came out 2 guns a-blazing. That was really the only time I can really recall. Outside of that, it really was, from the start of the season all the way through, it really was a position of starting off really, really conservative, very, defensively pragmatic. And from that standpoint, it only progressively got worse as players ended up dropping like flies. And so from that standpoint, he's 100% responsible for that. 100%. And from that standpoint, the tactics didn't necessarily reflect the player's strong suit. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not just necessarily about tactics. And I do want to make that self-clear that, number one, tactics play a part into it, but it's not the entire scope. And we have to start with man management, because I think that's actually a very important thing to discuss here. Because one of the things that started to leak out today was the fact that he didn't necessarily have good relationships with players. As a matter of fact, he relied on a core group of players, his leadership group, to relay certain information to the rest of the group. And so players that were not a part of that leadership group were left essentially to freeze on the outside. And players would go days without understanding exactly where they stood with the manager. That absolutely cannot happen. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like Thomas Frank needed to be Howard Kendall and went drinking with the boys, back in those Everton days. He doesn't have to be that, but he certainly has to be on good terms with every single player, first team player that dons a jersey every single Saturday. Your players have to know exactly where they stand in the pecking order, what's expected of you, and where you're coming up short, so you can actually challenge yourself, put yourself in a position where you can, potentially jump into the starting 11. That didn't happen. And that's actually quite massive, because when you think about Spurs, if you take a step back and you think about Spurs and you think about, I guess you can call it the fragility of this team. I don't like using that word, but let's be honest, this team is kind of fragile. That one of the things that I think that last year was a little bit different, right? Ange Postecoglou turns out he was actually a pretty good man manager. and had he had relationships with most of the players, and most of the players knew exactly where they stood. What ended up happening last season was just a combination of bad luck and a run of bad form, and it cost him. Fair, whatever. It is what it is. This year, there are some similarities, but the fact remains is that the players themselves didn't necessarily respect him, and because there was no respect, there was no communication. And so when communication lines break down, your players have no idea what to expect on a week-to-week basis, and you're not going to win many races doing that. The other thing was that he didn't necessarily install confidence in his players. And I know this is a talking point, but I go back to it because it makes a lot of sense. That number one, in his introductory press conference, he didn't talk about winning trophies. He talked about this being a transition season, that we're going to lose games. 100% we're going to lose games. And it's like, And from that, from that moment when and I've been to a few introductory press conferences, and it's the first opportunity to kind of relay your message to the players. It's your first opportunity at a good first impression. And what players want to hear, especially at this level, is that you want to win the absolute biggest trophies. And I know sometimes that, coaches will come in and they'll say it, to appease the fans, but really that's like a byproduct. Really what you're doing is you're trying to tell your group of players that you absolutely mean business. Like this is not anything other than what it is. I'm coming to a Big Six club and I'm expecting Big Six results. I'm going to challenge for Premier Leagues. I'm going to be challenging for Champions Leagues. And in the midst of this path, we're going to get good players, and we're going to put Tottenham back on the map where they belong. That was not said. And so from the off, you had players that are kind of like, well, wait a second, dude, we just won Europa League. What are you talking about? This is a transition season. We got medals around our neck because we went out there and did it. And now essentially what you're saying is you're invalidating it because you didn't do it. And so now all of a sudden, this is exactly what it is. And then all of a sudden, that's where tactics come in, because from the very beginning, the only time where the team looked good under Thomas Frank was the Super Cup. Let's be perfectly honest. The only time where this team really looked cohesive was that Super Cup. That Super Cup loss to PSG. That was pretty much it. And ever since then, it looked discombobulated. It looked disjointed. It looked like certain players were uncomfortable on the pitch. It looked like players at time had no idea what to do with the ball. And how many weeks did we witness this team usually pass the ball side to side or backwards because they had no idea where to go with the ball? And yesterday was, I guess you can say it was the apex or the crescendo to it, because it ended up being, we're just going to hoof it long. That's it. And we're hoping that Solanke can potentially hold it up, because then we can potentially, from that stage, we can maybe play a couple 1-2s and try to get up the pitch. Like that's what they had been reduced to. It's essentially passing along the back line and then playing it long. That's what we had been resorted to. And unfortunately, you can't do that at this level. There was absolutely zero creativity with players that, by the way, I understand there's some big names that are injured, but the players that are still there can still do a job. And by the way, like, I realize that we're 5 points from the drop, but we're only talking anywhere between 9 to 12 points. 9 to 12 points. That'll keep us up. 3 wins, maybe 4 between the rest of the way. And it's like, I look at the players that are still there, some of the players that are coming back. I think we're going to manage to stay up. It looks bad now. Yeah, I guess Tottenham Hotspur, I guess they look good in the City away game. Second game of the season. Yeah, sure. I'll give you that. Adrian says, let's see. He said Frank was sacked, failed to deal with the worsening situation 100%. He just receded 100%. I will 100% agree with that. Let's see. Per results, Frank was the worst Spurs manager in the Premier League era. 100%. 100%. And I think that the interesting thing about this one, Posh Spurs, is the fact that I don't think you can argue statistically. I think there's a case. I think there is a very good case to do it, but then you always have to unpack it and ask the reason why. And I think with this one, it's not just necessarily a straight up, well, because he's just not good enough. I don't necessarily believe that because at the end of the day, you don't stay in positions in the Premier League for 8 years or 7 years or however long he was at Brentford if you're a bad manager. Me personally, I think their system at Brentford was the reason why, and it's not just Thomas Frank. When you think about when that ownership took in, and you think about the coaches that they employed, all of them had success, and all of them left and resulted, and didn't necessarily result to anything once they left Brentford. And so from that standpoint, you kind of look at the Brentford system, you're like, okay, cool. It is the system that makes the manager, not the other way around. So that's the first thing. But the other thing is, it's like, I look at it and I look at this entire picture, and I have to take a step back and I look at it from the standpoint of the board didn't do enough, because you have to understand in today's modern football, you're going to need a squad size that's like barking up 35, because injuries are going to happen, and you're going to have at least starting level capable deputies on your bench that can come in and pick up the slack. And not what we necessarily have. In certain areas, we don't even have a deputy. As of right now, we don't have a winger available. We don't. Matisse is not a winger. He's a striker being played on the left-hand side. And the interesting thing is that was an issue to start the season. We had 2 on the right, 1 on the left, and now, oh, by the way, Wilson Odegaard goes out with a ACL. We don't have a winger. We don't have wingers. And it's like we're going to be in a situation where we're probably going to have to recall certain youth players off a loan because it's that desperate, especially if we have a new manager. Like I'll even say this, like, we have 3 strikers, no wingers, and we have capable midfielders. Like, even if, like, for instance, I don't think this is going to happen, but let's just throw this out there. Let's just say that Harry Redknapp wants to come in and decides, like, the best course of action is to go old school 4-4-2. Who's going to be on the right and left-hand side? You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting, right? Like, that's where, like, there's certain things that we're not even going to be able to play simple ball. So there's going to have to be some sort of creativity with whoever's going to be appointed next. But yeah, there it is. Injury rose 11. That's just crazy. And I'll bring that up in just a second. But one of the things that you absolutely need is squad depth. And it can't be just, here's our 11, and then, by the way, and then our next 11 are going to be a mix of, like, training school boys and, young players, the Archie Grays of the world. That cannot be, like, you have to, like, look at the big clubs, and even look at the second tier clubs, and look at their benches, and you understand that there's a reason why they are where they're at, because they actually have ample squad depth that are able to actually withstand it. So from that standpoint, I look at it and I say to myself, it's like, is his situation, did we get to this point because he's a bad manager, or was it the failing to adapt to the players that he had? Was it the failure to adapt to the situations that came along? And it's like, okay, well, if the answer is yes, then obviously it is what it is. And, that is the accountability needed. at this level. And I'm actually happy, by the way, that they did that. I'm happy that Spurs decided to part ways. What I'm not happy is the fact there is absolutely no plan in place. There is no plan in place. Like a good team in December, when the writing was on the wall, is going to start thinking about, okay, well, here's the thing. We're coming to the January window. And if we, okay, fine, we're going to back them. But what happens if we drop points? What happens if, we go on a run where we actually start having to think about this? We better have a plan in place, a name in place as a caretaker, right? That's what I had. That's what they just said today, that they're deciding which way to go, whether it's a permanent appointment or whether it's an interim. What do you mean you're deciding? This, they should already have that name there to appoint tomorrow. What do you mean you haven't decided? That should have already been decided. That should have been decided in December. That should have been decided in January. That you have a plan in place to hand off to the next. Just in case. In case of emergency, break glass. There it is. That is the downfall, is that the fact that Johan Lang and Vinny Venkatesham are in charge of this. And if they're not right about this, there is a good chance that we go down. Now, I'm going to make a case that an outside name right now is not going to take it. An outside name is not going to take this job because of the injury situation that we're in. Because he can't come in. Well, first and foremost, for instance, I keep hearing the name Robbie Keane and Roberto De Zerbi. And the problem with that is, number one, we're injured. I just laid it out, we don't have a winger available. So any coach that's going to come in and wants to play a specific style of football, well, guess what, dude? You're not going to be able to do that until April? And it's February. You're going to have to play bare bones football for the next month and a half, 2 months before you start getting some players back. But they're also coming into they're also coming into a club that's not exactly stable. And you're going to have to take your word. You're going to have to take the word of two guys that failed yet another manager. So me personally, I don't think anybody's going to leave their job or come right now. Not right now. And so from that standpoint, it's okay, cool. So you're probably going to have to go with an interim anyways. Because if you bring in a De Zerbi or a Robbie Keane, again, those two guys aren't coming. But let's just use the hypothetical. They got to embed themselves within the team. They have to embed themselves within the coaching staff that's there. And they have to familiarize themselves with players to find out exactly what certain players can and can't do. That's going to take time. And time is something that we just don't have. And that's not going to happen over the course of the next, 11 days? That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Okay? It's going to take a while. And me personally, I don't think that those guys are currently fits right now. So the smart play for me is just to appoint John Heitinga as the interim with no time frame. You know what I mean? It is what it is. You're the interim for right now. And then also call Harry Redknapp and just find out what's going on and whether or not he's capable of the next 4 months. Any interim coach, you're done at the end of the season. You're here between now and the end of the season. That's it. And the reason why Heitinga makes sense to me is because, number one, he's been a caretaker before. So he understands the situation, and he understands that his job is to get as high up in the table as humanly possible. That is his marching order. And he did that once with Ajax, and it succeeded. And when he got the permanent job, It didn't necessarily work out all that great, but he's been here before, so he understands the situation and he understands the environment that he's in. That's actually quite big. But he's also been here a month now, so he's already embedded. He's already familiar with the players, and he knows exactly what they can and can't do. He's seen it on a day-to-day basis. And you're really only asking him to win 3 games between now and the rest of the year. 9 points, 9 to 12 points keeps this team up. I don't care what happens with West Ham. 9 to 12 points keeps this team up. And we have 11 left? You're not asking for much. You're just asking him to keep them up before we get to the end of the season and the summer hits. I don't think that's necessarily a big ask. And you're also probably going to get a response out of the players. Let's understand that as well too. That I think they had gotten, I guess you can say, I'll use the word numb. I think the players themselves had gotten numb. It's not that it's me personally. I just think yesterday kind of encapsulated everything, right? And you saw exactly the motivation that players had. They're professionals, so they're going to do what the coach asks. But they were ignoring Frank yesterday. And when you think about what players want to be challenged. They don't want to be micromanaged. They want to be challenged. And when you're dealing with somebody that wasn't the greatest man manager, and you're dealing with somebody that is playing, a style of football that is counter to the way most players want to play. They want to be on the front foot. They want to be creative. They want to attack with flair. They want to put on a show. Because at the end of the day, aren't they, football players are also entertainers as well too. And so now you're having a dude that A, is not a good communicator. B, he, for whatever reason, takes players out of the starting 11 when they've actually, done well. Papsar can attest to it. João Palhinha can attest to it. I wonder what João Palhinha's, I wonder what João Palhinha was thinking when Yves Bissouma started that match yesterday. I wonder. Yeah, I bet he wasn't happy. So from that standpoint, it makes a lot of sense that Heitinga will come in as the interim. Because I think really what it comes down to is I think we're going to go down a road where Mauricio Pochettino comes back to this club. And I think Mauricio Pochettino put it out there. When you saw the interview that he did on the High Performance podcast, he laid it out. And by the way, that was actually planned, because understand that Mauricio Pochettino has 4 months left on his contract. He's going to be a free agent after the World Cup, right? He's doing it for a reason. This is setting up the next job. That's exactly what that was. That was, I'm going to do 2 things with this interview. I'm going to, trigger that sentimentality within the Spurs fan base. That's number 1. And he did a good job of that. Remember the good times. And then also to the team itself, that I am a better coach now than I was then. And we actually did some pretty good stuff then. We didn't do what we wanted, but I'm a better coach now. And that's putting yourself out there to let them know that you would come back. And I think that they want him back. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't want him back. We're at that point where, number 1, this club has to rebuild the foundation, without a doubt. It is eroded with a bunch of miscue hires. It is eroded by not backing managers. We've had 2 of the better managers in world football in the last 6 years and didn't back them. And that's the thing. It's we've progressively gotten to the point where we're in a relegation fight. Like, this is not Tottenham Hotspur. The foundation has to be, the foundation has to be rebuilt, and you can't do it. Like, there's only one guy in football that can do it. And what I mean by that is where the fans will give them the time to do it. Because Mauricio Pochettino has the built-in credibility, and he's also got the trust of the fans for what he did in spite of the Daniel Levy transfer policy. He was able to take players that were not high-paid players. They were not the top of players. They were kind of like option B and option C players that were cheap buys. Some of them were opportunistic buys, and he coached them up. That was the plan. It's like, these guys have a skill set. They're not, but they're good, not great. And Pochettino will coach them up, and he did. He got a tune out of a lot of players that may, like, more or less outside of Harry Kane and Sonny, may or may not have played for some of the top teams in England. Like, I think about that, right? Like, Dele Alli fell off the face of the earth. Christian Eriksen went to Man United, I guess. But who else who else left and went to a big club from the Pochettino era? Outside of those two, right? That lets exactly his ability to coach up certain players and get the absolute very best out of them. And so from that standpoint, you're coming back to Spurs, and allegedly they want to spend a shitload of money. Okay, Pochettino might be down for that, but what I will say is that if you do bring back Pochettino, you have to get rid of Johan Lang. That cannot be your director of football, because essentially what you're doing is you're essentially cuffing, both of Pochettino's hands behind his back with that dude. That dude cannot be the director of football whatsoever. Let's go ahead and take a look at the chat real quick. Let's see. We got Roy Park 335. He says, I agree with you. It's another body with experience that would be exactly what the board want, Chief. Well, here's the thing, man. Heitinga is there. He's been there for a month now. And again, this is an interim caretaker position. I mean, shit, Ryan Mason did it twice. And Ryan Mason, is Ryan Mason. Mr. Posh Spur says it was a perfect storm of the wrong appointment, wrong tactics, poor recruitment, and a lack of respect from our senior players. Yep. Carl Slim Blue, a.k.a. Audio Artisan, said, big up. What's going on with you, my guy? Good to see you. Beast of the 3945 said, Ruben Amorim in. Don't know. Let's see. Carl Slim Blue, a.k.a. Audio Artisan, says, bruv, did you just call me bruv? What's up, bruv? He called me bruv. If Arsenal win the league, West Ham survive, and we get relegated, that'd be like getting a kick in the balls, a punch in the face, and a headbutt at the same time. That's seriously getting kicked in the dick. Yeah. By the way, I think I'm the only one that'll welcome relegation because it forces Enoch. It forces Enoch actually to do their jobs. And it would force them to take a hard goddamn look at themselves in the mirror and actually face the problems that are facing this club instead of passing it off to guys like Lang and Vinny. Beast of the 3945 because he's magic. He is magic, man. He should be at Hogwarts. Let's see. I don't trust the spirit in our squad to battle a regulation season. Neither do I, man. I got to be honest with you. Neither do I. Let's see. Owners need to take a leaf out of Brentford and Brighton's playbook and by finally increasing the wages revenue ratio hovering. Yeah, it's supposed to go up. I think. Let's see. I don't either, by the way, Carl. I don't either. Let's see. I don't trust the board either. Concede De Zerbi in, which won't work. He has the Conte mentality. No, I actually don't think any of them would come. And by the way, De Zerbi would be a train wreck here. And again, like none of these coaches are going to be able to do anything until players get back. Like we didn't do shit in the January window. Like we didn't bring in a forward player at all to weather the storm. And that falls on the shoulders of Johan Lang. So you're telling me there was not one player in Europe that was capable of coming in and doing a job? Get the fuck out of here. Get out of here with that. And then the dude has the wherewithal to gaslight fans. Yeah. And by the way, Lang is not the problem. Oh, come on, man. Come on, beast of the 39-45. Are you kidding me, dude? That dude has had a sample size to prove to everyone that he's not capable of rebuilding this team. As a matter of fact, let's go back, shall we? Because Johan Lang, by the way, got demoted at Aston Villa and was ultimately replaced and got better. He came to Spurs and got demoted again. And they're going to bring in somebody else as well too. It's the moment that he couldn't sell Spurs to Matisse Tell is the moment he should have been fired. The moment he should have been fired. Carl Slim Blue says, "Sorry, dude. Sorry for what, bud?" Yeah, Flange needs to be moved on. Yeah, Villa demoted him, and then yeah, that's exactly what he is. He's a head scout. Like if you want to keep him, just appoint him as the director of the academy. Do that. Our academy has to get better as well too. I agree. Yeah, it would. It would absolutely cripple the club. But you know what's interesting about it though is our youth is good enough to get us right back up. I really do believe in our youth. They're capable of getting a promotion. But you're absolutely right. Financially, it really would. Not only would it cripple us, by the way, but all the talk of ambition goes right out the window. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Lang wanted to bring in Duran in on loan and was overruled. That still doesn't mean that he's good because he wanted Johan Duran. Let's see, not what I said. Steve McKenzie, who's our current head scout, held the same rule. Okay, there you go. Yeah, by the way, all his technical staff need to go as well too. You can't just fire him and keep his minions. That doesn't work either. What I will say is that it really does feel like the road is going to be paved towards Mauricio Pochettino, and I think it's funny because this afternoon I was on X just kind of perusing, and there's a lot of people that feel like he could do both. He can't do both. This isn't FIFA. This is not FC 26. This is not FIFA. It doesn't work like that way, right? He's gonna he would have to keep some of his coaching staff plugged in with the U.S. men's national team to give him information while he's coaching at Spurs. Yeah, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do it. It's going to be one or the other. And and by the way, he's under contract with the U.S. men's national team until after the World Cup. Now, what he can do, it's just like a player that's coming at the end of his contract, right? He can sign a pre-contract, and as soon as the season ends, he moves. It's the exact same thing, right? There is a buyout. But again, the U.S. men's national team can just say, no, he's here until the end of the World Cup. And by the way, I don't think Mauricio Pochettino would do that to the United States. I seriously doubt that he would leave the U.S. men's national team in the lurch less than 100 days out from the World Cup. I just do not see it. I do not see it. I just don't. But I mean, that being said, if he wants to come back to Spurs, he can negotiate a contract right now and have everything set in stone. Everything is written down on paper. And then as soon as the World Cup ends, he comes. That's it. If they wanted to do that, that would be perfectly fun and it would be acceptable. And that Poch is coming as soon as the United States gets knocked out of the World Cup. But outside of that, I kind of like the idea, by the way, of Pochettino coming back because I look at this squad at full strength because again, at the beginning of the season, when I looked at this team, I didn't see a relegation uh, candidacy in this group. Even if things went wrong, I still didn't see this team being the type of team that was going to be 5 points off the drop. I just didn't see it. At the beginning of the season, I said if things broke right, this could be a sixth place team, like a European team, a Europa League type squad. Clearly, they needed better players to the door at the time. They still didn't do enough. But when you're looking at it on paper and you're looking at the talent that's on this team, it's like, yeah, if they're able to stay healthy, yeah, I can see a sixth place. My requirements at the beginning of the season was have a respectable showing in the league, whether that's anywhere between 6th to 8th. In a first season, I'm good with that. Under Thomas Frank, anywhere between 6th, 7th, and 8th, I'm good with that. In one of the cup competitions, get to Wembley. This team is capable of getting to Wembley in a cup competition. So at least prioritize, whether it's the FA Cup or the League Cup, whatever the case may be, get to Wembley in at least one of the cups, and then get to the knockout rounds in the Champions League. And they were capable of getting to the knockout rounds. They did that, but they essentially they pissed away both cup competitions, and now they're pissing away the Premier League. I didn't see this one coming. But what I will say, with a guy like Mauricio Pochettino through the door, there is going to be a certain set of standards that he abides to, and that is universally respected by the players. And it comes down to fitness and training, 100%. You're going to have to earn your way into the starting 11. That's number one, but also understand that number two, it's Tottenham Hotspur, and we are here to win. And if you can't meet these standards, you won't be at this club. And I think that the players that are here respond to it. Because again, me personally, I think players want to be challenged more than anything else. And I actually think that the group here is capable. It desperately needs help. And that's, again, when I talk about the foundation of Tottenham Hotspur, it needs to be rebuilt. And I personally feel like Poch is going to be that guy who can be here again for another 3 to 5 years and rebuild it before ultimately passing it off again. And if ENIC is serious, they'll give him the tools to succeed. Again, Lane can't be here, but I can envision a scenario. Let's see. A possible solution might be to install Perez as their interim. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind Perez. I guess to the end of the season, and then he rejoins Poch for the U.S. World Cup, the U.S. World Cup run, and then both come after. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You guys tell me who you guys want, and understand that I don't necessarily see De Zerbi or Xabi Alonso or Xavi Hernandez or Ruben Amorim. I just don't, because the squad is decimated. They're not going to take a short-term gig either. They're going to want concessions in place that they'll be here next season. And I just don't think that I do not think the Spurs are going to give them any type of guarantee. Let's see. Would you take Tim Sherwood as interim? I don't know, man. Would you? Would you take Timmy Sherwood? I know he threw his hat in the ring today. Let's see. Just seeing Palace lose to Burnley. Yeah, Jesus. Let's see. Poch presents a get out of jail free card for these owners, because he's the only guy that can bring in who will unify the vast majority. At least initially. Yeah. See, here's the thing, man. People shout about ENIC to the roof, right? And understand that ENIC didn't have the transfer policy in place for the first 25 years. That was Daniel Levy. ENIC, by the way, now this is ENIC's problem. ENIC doesn't know football. That's their problem. and they're trusting people that, that tell them that they know about football, i.e. Vinny Van Contesham and Johan Lang. They have put their trust and their guidance into these two people's hands, and it's these two guys, these two idiots that are running the club. Now, the one thing that Fabian Lewis can do is override them and get rid of them. But that being said, that they're going to be responsible for hiring the next. And if these guys are not football people and they are doing this with Vinny and Lang, then yeah, that's the downside about this. I can see that. Some part of me believes that they actually want to restore Tottenham's glory. I just don't think they know how to get there. I think that's what their biggest problem is. Let's see. Forrest Drew and Marinakis is furious. Imagine Forrest get relegated by Forrest took them damn near to the Champions League last year, bud. Let's see. Kudus is out for a while. Let me pull this up because I know Adrian put this in there earlier. There's the 11 that are out. Let's see. Pedro Porro should be coming back sooner rather than later, and then Kudus. Kudus should be back in March. Same with Bergvall. I think Bergvall, Richarlison, and Kudus are all hammies. Betancourt's going to take a little bit longer. Same with Kulu and Madison. Davis is done. And Udogi and Odebear just happened. So they're going to be out for a while. Let's see. Daniel Levy didn't know squat about football when he became the chairman either. Yeah, but after 25 years, he certainly did know about football. But his transfer policy was the reason why this team struggled to recruit. Let's see. Austin Gray, Souza, Phillips, Takai, Albert, Devine, Donnelly, Yang, Linkshire, Moore. That will be our lineup if we get. No, actually, you're forgetting. No, actually, Phillips will not be there. It'll be Luka Vuskovic next to Takai, by the way. And Matisse Tell stays too. Yeah. Hold on real quick. It's going to be it's no. And Archie Gray moves right into the center defensive mid next to Lucas Bergvall. Yep. I heard none have regular that none of their players have relegation clauses. Yeah. So technically speaking, they would have to go down too. And by the way, no, he's not. Spurs would hold on to him 100%. They're not getting rid of Luka Vuskovic, and it's so funny though that people are saying that they should just let him go because he wants to stay in Germany. It's like fuck no. He's already he is, unless somebody's willing to overpay. No. And by the way, if Romero does leave in the summer, that's your starting right center back next year. Luka Vuskovic. That dude is a stud. All right, guys. I wanted to talk a little bit about this. I'm glad that I was able to do it. At the end of the day, I'm glad that Thomas Frank ended up getting the sack. He needed to get the sack. It was trending in such a bad, toxic way. And at the end of the day, man, this is a results-driven business. And I understand that Spurs paid a pretty penny to get him and his backroom staff. I know that, in order to sack him, it was going to cost him a lot of money to get rid of him. But that being said, that can't be the reason why you keep that cannot be a reason why you keep a coach that just literally does not fit around when obviously the results were not going their way. And it wasn't just the results, it's the fact that we showed no heart. We showed no bravery, except for when we went down at the half. We would come out and we would try. We would try. Sometimes we nicked a draw, but otherwise we lost. And from that standpoint, not only did the results not go their way, but also results in other areas when it comes to man management. And unfortunately, it was time. It ran its course. And one of the biggest indictments is the fact that we saw nothing that would indicate that this thing is progressing in the right direction. And so from that standpoint, it had to be done. It absolutely had to be done. Now the question becomes, now that he's gone, where does it go? And I will say that as far as I'm concerned, going the interim route is probably going to be the only way that they're going to be able to go. Because me personally, I do not believe, I don't believe like any, I guess you could say, big time coach, or at least a coach that has a name is going to take this job. I do not think Garrett Southgate takes this job either. That's kind of where we're at. And so from that standpoint, you got to get from point A to point B, which essentially means that you're looking for a caretaker that you can trust. And it's funny, yeah. Like I don't think Tim Sherwood. So this guy right here in the TikTok chat says, Tim Sherwood is a knob watching a match from the stands. That's pretty funny. And I'm in Michigan, my guy. That's where I'm at in the U.S. So I guess I guess it's is there a caretaker from outside that can come in short notice? And yeah, there is. I would actually be okay if Harry Redknapp took over for now until the rest of the season. Because you're going to get a good man manager. You're going to get somebody that's going to put his arm around the shoulders of a guy like Mickey Van de Ven and just tell him to go play and have a good time. And, yeah, he's 78. I get it. He's 78. But again, you're only asking him to win 3 games between now and the rest of the season to stay up. This isn't like when he went to Southampton. I don't know if you guys remember that when he went to Southampton. And that team was absolute rubbish. I still think that this is a team that's going to stay up. It looks bleak, but again, you're asking a guy like Harry Redknapp to come in, be a man manager, bring some confidence back to the club, and just play front foot attacking football between now and the rest of the season. And that's it. And I think the fans would get a kick out of it. You would have sellout crowds. And you would at least bring some joy back into an otherwise, essentially what's been, a shitty season. So, from that standpoint, that would be the way that I would go. That would be the way that I would go until after the World Cup, and then you bring Poch back, and then you roll from there. And it looks like Nick Vid says earlier reports saying the club are ready to pay for Poch to leave the USA job. And again, we were talking a little bit about this. The U.S. can still hold him. It's going to be like that would have to be negotiated. And his release clause with the U.S. is like 25 million U.S. Like it's a lot of money. They put that release clause in there just for this exact situation, so nobody can just pluck him. And if this was last summer, he probably would have came. If this was in the summer of 2025, where don't get me wrong, it's a tight pinch for the U.S., but they probably could have brought somebody in to navigate that last little 6, 7, 8 months until the World Cup. But now that we're 100 days from the World Cup out, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. But he's got a release clause, so we'll see. Me personally, I don't think Poch would do that to the U.S. I think he actually wants to coach in the World Cup. Me personally, I think that's really what it is. I think he wants to come in post World Cup, go through a transfer window, get to know his players, instill his philosophy, instill his tactics, and then hit the ground running. I think coming in now, I don't think it's necessarily a good time. Like me personally, I don't think he would do that to the U.S. personally. I don't think he would. He's burning a lot of bridges if he does that. Now he can sit there and say that the release clause was met, but he still has to accept. You get what I'm saying? He still has to okay it. And me personally, that's burning bridges. And for a guy like Pochettino, you want to leave all doors open, right? You want to leave all doors open because theoretically speaking, let's say that he burns a bridge with the U.S., comes to Spurs, and it doesn't work out, and he flames. Where is he going to coach after that? He's burned his bridge with the U.S. You don't think that gets around? He's not going to be able to go the international route again. And no big clubs, and by the way, no big clubs are going to come after him at that point because he burned his bridge. That shit gets around, Whereas if he does the right thing, coaches in the World Cup, gets the U.S. as far as they go, comes to Spurs, and does well again, he's in line to take those massive jobs again, those PSG jobs, those Chelsea jobs, right? You want to do whatever. As a coach, you do not want to close any doors whatsoever. And closing the U.S. door before a World Cup on our home soil, that would be catastrophic for his career. Tottenham Hotspur says we need 4 wins, 21 points right now. Yep. Yeah, 9 to 12 points. We survive. We're talking we have 11 games left. 4 wins in 11. I think it's doable. And then he says, plus the U.S. is one of the World Cup co-hosts, so leaving right now would get a lot of their time, which would be another pair. Yeah. 100%. All right, guys. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank Tottenham Hotspur, my guy, Carl Slim Blue, a.k.a. Audio Artisan, Beast of the 3945. You're a beast, my friend. Let's see, Adrian from Spurs Diehards, Dermatron camera. Something happened. There it is. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell as well too, so you don't miss out on any upcoming Stateside Footy content. By the way, on Friday, Billy T will be here. As we will continue talking about this, we'll continue talking about Pochettino, and then on Sunday, we will have MLS Moves, Will from MLS Moves, which is a very good MLS content channel, as we gear up for the start of the 2026 MLS season. So we're going to be talking about some of the off-season, some of the off moves that happen, and also who is in line to win trophies in Major League Soccer. So that is coming on Sunday. So big weekend, and I think I might even slip another show in somewhere probably on Saturday. I got to get a hold of my guy, Dave, from the Irish Hotspur to see if you want to come on. But until then, again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell. For those that are watching currently on TikTok Live, the address is in the my YouTube channel is in the description. So if you want to head over and hook a brother up, you're more than welcome to. If not, it is what it is. But I'd really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Okay. Let's see. Word on the street is Spurs want their new manager, interim or permanent, in place by Monday at least. Yeah, it's stupid. They should already have that in. All right. Thank you, guys.